We want to thank you for joining us here at 3. I'm Jonathan Gonzalez.
And I'm Kathy Vara. Among other things, the mayor addressed this moment. We want to show you Senator Alex Padilla being forcibly removed from a news conference this morning while trying to question Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem.
Secretary Noem was in Los Angeles doubling down on the Trump administration's immigration operations across the city and really the county. During her address this morning in Westwood, she reiterated that violence of any kind against a law enforcement officer will result in serious punishment.
But reaction is now pouring in from officials actually nationwide over how the Trump administration forcibly handled the Democratic senator.
NBC4's Lolita Lopez is live in Westwood with more on this reaction. And also, Lolita, notably, the senator did not answer any questions after he spoke today.
No, he was definitely emotional about what was going on, but did not answer any questions, but said he would be continuing to follow up with us in the media about what happened. You can see we are outside the federal building here where the National Guard remains federalized here protecting this building, as we heard Mayor Bass say in that press conference we just listened to here. But Senator Padilla was, like I said, very emotional once he came out here about what happened inside the federal building during that press briefing with Secretary Noem. Let's take you there.
That has been able to do this.
Hands up.
Also, I want to talk.
Sir, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the secretary because the fact of the matter is, a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your.
I also want to
Hands up.
This is the moment when Senator Alex Padilla stood up during the press conference with the Homeland Security Secretary and other federal agencies. He announces his name and that he was and is the sitting U.S. Senator. Now, the senator says he was attempting to ask a question about the people detained across Los Angeles in immigration raids that started last week. NBC4 was recording as the senator was forced on the ground and handcuffed. Nearly an hour after the event inside the federal building, Senator Padilla made a statement about what happened, explaining he was awaiting a briefing from federal officials about recent immigration raids as part of his responsibility as a senator to provide oversight. He says he went to the press conference to gather information after previous inquiries had gone unanswered.
If this is how this administration responds to a senator with a question, if this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers out in the Los Angeles community and throughout California and throughout the country.
The senator says he was not arrested or detained. He did not take questions as he left, nor give any details about a meeting that he had for about 15 minutes with the Homeland Security Secretary, as her office stated happened.
No one knew he was there. No one was expecting him. He stood up and started yelling and was aggressively approaching the Secretary of Home.
You think it was aggressive?
He was being very aggressive.
Now, we spoke one-on-one with U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California, Bill Saley, who was part of today's press conference. We asked him about concerns that government leaders like Senator Padilla have been expressing, including not being allowed into federal detentions where people are being held. Congressional leaders have not been let in to see what's happening there.
That's not true. They're showing up unannounced. They're trying to make a scene and a spectacle. There's a polite way to do it. This is not it in our system of government.
And just a few minutes ago, we did also catch up with Secretary Noem to ask her about that meeting she had with Senator Padilla after all of the events here at the federal building. Take a listen to what she said.
I wish that he would have reached out and identified himself and let us know who he was and that he wanted to talk. His approach, was something that I don't think was appropriate at all. But the conversation was great, and we're going to continue to communicate.
Again, the senator says he was here at the press conference wanting to ask a question of the secretary and others regarding the immigration raids as part of his duty, accountability, and oversight for his constituents here in the state of California. We have not heard again from him today, but he did say as he was leaving that he expected to have more comments in the next hours and a couple of days. For now, that's the very latest from the federal building in Westwood. Lolita Lopez, NBC4 News.
All right. Thank you so much, Lolita. For more on this, we want to bring in our political reporter, Conan Nolan. Conan breaking down some of Secretary Noem's statements from today's press conference. Conan?
Right. She said a lot, condemned the state of California's governor, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, but specifically said that while they're targeting those who've committed felonies and are here illegally, fundamentally, anyone who's in the country without authorization is a target. The Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, flanked by representatives from the FBI, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and the Border Patrol, again maintaining that ICE operations and raids are targeting felons, what she and President Donald Trump have called the worst of the worst.
To make sure that these criminals, bad actors, murderers, rapists, pedophiles, traffickers, and drug traffickers are brought in and brought to justice finally under this administration.
Specifically, we've focused on gang members, human traffickers, violent drug dealers, and rapists.
But immigration raids, such as this one recently in a Ventura County farm field, appear to have gone far beyond those who have committed felonies. There have been ICE actions against businesses, car washes, and outside Home Depots. Noem admitted that the word criminal now applies to anyone who's entered the country without authorization.
Well, we literally have tens of thousands of targets. So I think that's what's more important. People should know that there are millions of people that are in this city illegally, and that we have, I would say, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of targets that we will be going after.
Noem even defending the arrest of those appearing at a prearranged asylum hearing during this exchange with NBC Telemundo reporter Alejandra Ortiz.
Are we sending the message as a country that people, even with no criminal record, and that they're taking the legal correct path, are not safe from
If they took the legal correct path, they would have come here legally. They wouldn't have come into our country illegally.
The problems, though, with arresting those in farm fields as well as in hospitality has reached the president, who on a social media tweet said our great farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business have been stating that our very aggressive policy on immigration is taking very good, long-time workers away from them, with those jobs being almost impossible to replace, the president saying. Changes are coming. The president seeming to indicate that there could be a carve-out for certain industries, despite whether or not those individuals are criminals, in order to keep the economy running. I'm Conan Nolan, NBC4 News.
All right, Conan, thank you. And if you've been with us for the last hour, you heard Mayor Bass addressing the Alex Padilla incident.
She also talked about the raids and ongoing protests across the city. Robert Kovacic was in the room there. He joins us live now from downtown with more on this. And Robert, we know you also asked about curfew.
We talked about a lot, and the mayor covered a lot of ground here. First of all, inside of the small chamber, she was surrounded by, I would say, 50 community leaders, just showing the support that people in Los Angeles has and our immigrant community has. And Mayor Bass, of course, then talked about what happened with Senator Padilla. She says she has spoken to him. She's inquired about his health. She has reached out to the administration and was shocked to hear that the administration says that she has not contacted them. This is what she had to say about the events that unfolded this morning involving Senator Padilla.
And I just want to say that I was listening to the words of the secretary at the press conference describing LA as a war zone. There's no one up here that sees Los Angeles like that. And I know, as the press, you know this is not all of Los Angeles. This is isolated to a few blocks in a city that is over 500 square miles. Protests, and especially the protests that devolved into vandalism, represents about half a square mile. So the notion that this is happening all over our city, the notion that this city is not governable, the notion that we need the military to intervene, we have the capacity to address these problems, and I know there's not a person up here that supports vandalism, that supports violence, and that understands if you support the immigrant community, you know how to do it in a peaceful manner. We are proud to say that we have a well-established, a well-respected immigrant rights organizations that have been holding protests for years and years that have never devolved into violence. And so to characterize what is going on as our city is a city of mayhem is just an outright lie. I'm not going to call it an untruth. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to call it for what it is, which is a lie.
So where are we right now? Well, when it comes to last night, as we take a look at some video, there may be a curfew zone, but those protesters left the curfew zone and made it all the way to confront police who formed a skirmish line in Koreatown. Mayor Bass saying just minutes ago that the curfew will continue. The curfew zone, which is basically a 1 square mile radius in the center of downtown Los Angeles near the Civic Center and beyond, that curfew zone will not expand, but the curfew will continue. And that, of course, applies to tonight as well, starting at 8 o'clock in the evening until 6 o'clock in the morning. She was asked today about the protests and the confrontation with the police. The mayor said that whatever happened, whether it was those people that were committing vandalism or if LAPD officers perhaps went too far with protesters, she said this is not only a city of immigrants, this is a city of cameras. There's surveillance cameras everywhere. She said everything, vowing everything will be investigated. But the concern that she had today, and that is why, Jonathan Cathy, she was surrounded by so many people, is that the immigrant community moving forward. She is worried about the fear. She talked about how graduation attendance has dropped, that people are not going to work right now. That has dropped, as well as people who are now too